Starting right now. Okay, so the recording's starting, and we're talking about web components, what we're calling web components. iMIS actually calls them tagged lists, tags, and let's go into this section here so you can see that what I'm talking about. Tagged list formats. So that's iMIS vocabulary. I think web components is probably an easier thing for us to use, and definitely an easier thing for other people like the larger team to understand. I'm going to show you what we're talking about. This is an example of a web component, or technically a tagged list format. We're going to take a look at this one. I was trying to find maybe another example. Here's one, this block here, who is EO. So these are all on the GSEA site. We started to use those things there. So we'll take a look at how these are created. Technically speaking, this is a tagged list format. We're just saying, hey, I have a set of, let's say, markup, a set of code that I want to reuse in a bunch of places, and I don't want to have to do anything but just drop it in and have it work. That's the idea behind these. That's one of the ideas. Tags actually do some more things, but we'll just talk about this because we only have about a half hour for this call, and I think this will be enough for us to cover. So the way we get this to work, or the way we get this little block to work, is we basically create this item once, and then we can reuse it. And let's take a look at this inspired one, for example. So if I go into one of these, I'll go into the content areas, and I think that was apply now is what I call the actual record. If I open this up, you're going to see that it's just very straightforward. It's using some classes that Roger had created for the site. So I'm using those here, and then I'm just putting in this content, and that's what we were just looking at on this page here. So with those classes, it'll look nice and pretty like this. And I just have to create this once, and then save it. And then I go to the tagged page, and I created a tag called GSEA apply. And when I add that tag to this piece of content, I can then display it on a page. And we're all familiar with tagging, I think. The way I explain it to people that aren't familiar, though, is I use the analogy of magnets, and because they kind of visually, they get that. Like, I can go to a page on the site, and let me find a page where we're using that. Was that Contact Us or FAQs? That was FAQs. So if I go to the FAQs page, once this thing opens up, I'll scroll to the bottom, and I added a record there that said, okay, you're going to pull from your list of content anything that has the GSEA apply tag. This is the magnet. This is an iPart. We can't modify the HTML here. Like if I click configure, there is no design button, there is no HTML button. It's literally a web part or an iPart whose sole job is to find content that matches this magnet, that matches this tag. If there were 10 stories, like let's say news alerts, press alerts, things like that, it would display 10 of them. In this case, there's just one, so that's why we're only seeing one footer. But this is how we'll be using this a lot: is just a specific a specific tag, a specific piece of content, just one item. So it displays it here. If I wanted to add this footer to another page, let's say the media page, I could do the same thing. I would just go to this page, scroll down to the bottom, presumably, and let's just do it. I'm not going to save it. But I would say add content. I'm going to go to this content folder. I'm going to pick contact or content tag list. So this is what drops the widget, the iPart, on the page. Once that iPart's on the page, I would go down here to the selected tags and say, this is specifically the piece of content that I want dropped here. So I'm going to wait for the list of tags to come up. I alpha order them, so it just makes sense because we might begin, we might have 20 or 30 of these things in pretty quick order. So for GSEA, I preceded all of them with GSEA just so they'd be super easy to find. The one we talked about was the apply. So if I just add, that magnet, let's say, to this page, it literally is it's just going to put that exact same HTML at the foot of this page or wherever I place it. The only other thing I need to do is up here, I need to decide, I need to tell iMIS, like, how do you present this particular piece of content? And in this case, I think it was HTML only. So what that means is there's nothing fancy about how I want this item to be represented. I just want it to be the straight HTML that I used when I created the content over here. So that this makes a little bit more sense, I'm going to talk about another example of a display. Like this is that HTML only, so it's only HTML. Here's the one that I did for the blog. The blog is a little bit different. Let's go to the blog just for a second so we can see it kind of in action. So this is another example of tagging. I created these stories and I tagged each one of them as GSEA blog. I added some additional information, like I chose an image, I chose a posted date, I keyed in a title, I also keyed in a description, and so these perform differently than that simple footer. Here's the other footer that we talked about that I was showing you earlier. This is another example. This isn't the apply one, but this is the EO footer. But in this more fancy blog item, if I go to this defined tag list and I go to GSEA blog, we're going to see that it's doing some more funky stuff. Like it's displaying a picture here, it's displaying the headline here, it's displaying the date, and right here on the published date, and then it's giving that description right here. So it's doing more stuff, but that's another example of how you can use tagging and tag lists. And the only reason I'm showing you the blog is just so we have something to think about down the road. But I did mention when we drop this thing on a page, we have to tell it which tagged list format to use. And I just wanted you guys to understand, hey, it doesn't have to be just straight HTML. You can make it pretty sophisticated and make it do anything you want. And just to go back to the blog, since you saw that markup, we could have this thing do whatever we wanted it to do. We could add custom fields. Roger and I have talked about adding additional custom fields. This is a custom field. We could add 3 different kinds of custom fields. We could start adding chapter and region, or whatever you want. We could add to this, and it could affect how this thing performs. Like we could literally sort, not necessarily on posted date, but we could sort by region. And region could be a drop-down field. We could just sort alphabetical on title if we wanted to. We could sort on whether or not they had a picture. So there's all sorts of things that we could do. Basically, if we can dream it up, there's probably a way to make it happen. But the core of this is it's kind of like a 2-step process. The first step might be you create, your very simple web component, your widget, whatever, your block of common content, you create it, and then you give it a tag. And then the second part of that is you would go to your page. Let's see if I can find a page. And if I can't, we'll just create a new one, or we'll go to an existing one. The second part is you go to the page and you say, hey, I want to drop in my web component. And we'll just go to any page here. Let's go to past finalists. We won't save anything, but the second part of this is you just go to the bottom and you add a component. It's that content tag list. This is what it's called, content tag list. Once this opens up, And I hope I clicked it. I'm not seeing any spinning though, so we'll try that again. Content tag list. And once that comes up, you say, this is where you go to pick your tag. So we'll just pick the same one we did earlier, apply. And then you need to tell iMIS this is a required field, so if I tried to save it, it would yell at me. But you need to tell it, like, what do you want me to do with it? And like I said, most of the time we're just doing HTML only. I would think, at least out of the, as we start here, it'll just be like that simple stuff. But if we needed to do something, more advanced, that's when we would pick, one of these other guys, like the GSC blog, or we would just create one. Like if we started to do press releases, we would probably have one called, EO press releases, or maybe EO committee notes. Like maybe for every committee meeting they have, like that could have been a way to do that page. It's just been a long time since I've looked at it, and I don't know if you guys have looked at it or recently enough to kind of remember what that looks like. But there's a ton of committee, meeting notes. We could have done that as a tagged item, and that way you just key in the dates and upload your file and put in a description maybe for the meeting, and then boom, it's always going to look like the one, all the others, like these blogs all are formatted identically. So I'll stop rambling because that's probably a good place to stop, and then feel free to, if you're holding on to any questions, feel free to ask questions, or we can create a new one if you want to.
So I'm good with what you said, Tom. But
Okay.
I have very quick question. Like,
Sure.
tag list format. So we have different kinds of formats over here. So in this, how we will pass? We won't pass dynamically the data, or we can pass the data dynamically. So again, to the component.
Yeah,
As we have,
all the data is dynamic. It's pulling out. I mean, can you maybe give me a specific example of what you mean by dynamic data?
so for example, in this block, we are using all the dynamic content, right?
Mm-hmm.
So how we are passing the content?
It's yeah. Let's look at one of the stories for the blog. So the blog is more intense than just that apply now HTML block or widget that we looked at. If we go to the blog, we have these custom fields set up to where we're capturing that data. So we'll just take a look at one of these for a second.
Okay.
And there's kind of two parts to this. There's a teaser, like what we see here, and then there's the full story. So I'm going to open this up in a new tab just so we can jump to both pretty quickly. So this is generated, let's say dynamically, okay? Just to use that term, but I don't want to confuse you by using that term. But you use that term, so I'll use it. This is all created dynamically, and then here's like, let's just say the static page behind it. So I've got titles, date, picture, and a bunch of text. Okay, so let's take a look at this. This is what we're seeing over here.
Yes.
This is the full page. Whoops. So if I go to the markup, it's using some classes and styling, so it doesn't look exactly like that because it's pulling those classes and rendering them on the page. But you can see that I've got this div and my H1, and here's my date. I've got a wrapper and some other classes, but this is what makes this page.
Yes.
And then we go a little step further. So we get all of this, so I'm gonna hit cancel. And then I'm gonna go to properties. And Vikram, this is probably what you were talking about or wondering about, like how does it do the rest of this stuff? Well, the user comes in here and assigns a publish date. So they just pop this up and they pick whatever date they want, and that's how or I'm sorry, it's down here, the blog date. This one's actually system generated. I created this one so that they could backdate it. So they use this blog date and blog teaser to provide what we were seeing on this page. So it automatically pulls the title, it pulls that blog date and displays it here, it pulls that description, blog teaser, and displays it here, and then it grabs the picture from here. So they just, just like we would place an image on a regular page, they're just using these properties or these custom fields on the properties page to construct the rest of that. And if I go back into the defined tagged list and we look at GSEA blog for a second, this is the kind of the meeting of the roads, so to speak, because this is what determines what this list is going to look like. So let's pretend that we didn't want an image, or let's pretend that we wanted 2 images, let's say. So I've got the first image here, and then if I was adding a second image, I would do it here in this markup, and I would reference these items over here on the right, because these are all of the fields that are available to us, like all the data fields. And you can see blog date is up here. I created that one, and I created blog teaser. So if I don't know how well this is showing up, with this resolution, but you can see blog date is appearing here, and there's some special tags that make this happen. And then blog teaser is appearing here, and again, there's some special tags to make that happen. And the special tags are, it gets the GUID for this data column, and it gets the GUID for that blog date column, and there's some special formatting to get that to represent properly. But this is how, if we needed to make a listing like this, that's how this stuff is done. I think most of what we're going to do, we won't even be using what I'm talking about right now. We won't be using this. I think we'll probably just be using that HTML only. So let's look at that just for a second, because we've talked about it a couple of times, but we haven't looked at it yet. And what this says is just give me whatever markup was added to that page. So if you guys created a page called Apply Now, or you created a page called Social Share, just whatever you guys put in there, like here's the Who is EO footer that we saw. So it just says, hey, whatever HTML you plugged in that record, boom, just that's all I need. Just give me this straight markup. And drop it wherever you're telling me to drop it using that content tag list part. So we can do one from scratch, I think, because I think it's a lot to absorb in a short amount of time, but it really is pretty straightforward. And
so you made everything in blog, right? Is what you're showing in this.
Yes.
Can you open that blog?
We just did. You want me to go back to the markup?
No. You are showing this screen, right? In that screen there is a blog. BLOG.
This one right here?
No. Can you go back to that screen?
I can't understand what you're saying, Vikram. Where do you want me to go?
No. Go to the content design. Content design, which have been opened this before. Yeah. No. Previous one. So this staff site that is showing all the.
So this is the full story. This is what appears when you click on this link.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is like, just before you open another page, can you go back? Back. Yeah, this page. So this page backend I'm just asking. So how you have been connected over here, all these.
So this page is constructed from that tagged list part that I showed you.
Yeah.
This is what builds that list. Here's the picture, here's the title, here's the posted date, and then here's the teaser. this markup is what creates this
So
list.
for this one, so for this, I'm okay with this one, but there will be a main page, right, for this one.
A main page.
Let me share my screen. If you see here, so this is the blog, right?
Yep.
The main. Yeah, so this is what I'm asking. So here we have been connected everything.
Yep. So this works just like the footer that I showed you. Click configure. This is a content tag list. And all I said was show me the blog and use the list format that I've called GSEA blog right up here.
Yeah, this is what I'm asking. This is my question.
Yep. This works just like the other ones I was showing you.
Yeah.
Same exact thing.
I'm good with that.
Cool, cool. Okay. So let's, maybe we've got a few more minutes. We'll just, these are more complex. I don't see a lot of, right out of the bat anyway, or out of the gate, I don't see a lot of uses like this. I gave you the typical examples, like the blog is a perfect example. Press releases is a perfect example. Committee meeting or committee like notes, that's another great example. But most of the examples are going to be, most of the time that we're going to be using this, it'll just be straight HTML that we want to use in several different places, and we don't want to repeat or copy and paste from one page to another because, of course, things can change. Like let's just go to this. If we went to one of those examples, like share this, let's pretend they wanted to drop one of these, or they wanted to remove the word this and just say share, or they wanted us to change the icons. We don't have to go to 15 different pages where this is being used. We just go to the source. We just go to one page, make the change, and it just propagates all the way across. So that's the real benefit of doing this. The other benefit might be that you can kind of make this like a self-contained unit. So if there is special styling that is only relevant to this little blob here, and you can just make the component so that I guess it's all self-contained. Like an example, let's pretend that we have this. Let's pretend that we want to use this over on EO, and we could just drop this same part on any page on the EO site, and we wouldn't have to worry about uploading or updating like the main style sheet. We could just, these styles could just live here, let's say, and we know it would look good wherever we dropped it. We wouldn't have to worry about doing anything in the main style sheet if we didn't want to. So that's a user preference. But you can decide how to deal with that on a case-by-case basis. But if it's helpful, we can. The blog is probably one side of the spectrum. Like that's probably extreme. Let's take a look at. I don't know if we can get into dev right now.
No, we can't get.
So let's. But I will take us through the theoretical steps that we would to create one from scratch. So to create one from scratch, we'll go into this archive folder because there's nothing really in there, and we'll just create, I'm going to create something called new web component. And we would just craft it like we would any other page, any other item that we're working on. And I feel like we just should maybe grab some stuff. I don't feel like reinventing the wheel on this. Let's see if I still have something open. Let's just go to content areas. I'm just going to recreate that apply now, but we're just pretending that it has different content in it. So we grab our markup, and then if I can find where I left off, we've got our markup in here. So that's almost all we have to do. I've confused it, so I'm going to actually bang out of this. And I'm going to go to tags first. And we're not going to hurt anything by creating a new tag. I'm going to create, because I'm actually going to later delete this, but just so that we can see how it would work. I would create a tag. Let's pretend it's on the GSEA site, and it's just going to be new widget, new component, whatever. That's the name. I think it does help if we come up with a naming scheme that makes this thing easy to maintain over time. But you can see that it just created it, and if I refresh this page, it would drift up in there and be all nicely ordered, alphabetically. So we created our new tag or our new magnet, if that helps you think about it. And then I'm going to go back into the content, and let's see if it's going to. This is the live one, so let's just create a new one. So right now I'm just dealing with the HTML side of things. Just going to paste that in there. And then if you remember, I had to assign the tag, because right now this is going to go nowhere. It's not going to be displayed anywhere. So I have to say, okay, this is when I want you to show this. I want you to show this on, this is my new widget. So I've assigned that tag to this item, and I save and publish. Then all I need to do is go to my web page, and I'll stay in here, and let's just create a new page. I won't publish this page, but we could if we wanted to, because it's not going to be visible anywhere. But we just have new page, and theoretically I'd probably have a bunch of other content on here, like maybe something up top, maybe something in the middle. So let's just go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to paste the exact same stuff in here, just so I have some markup. So I've got some markup, and then after that markup, or maybe in the middle of the page, or maybe at the top of the page, who knows, like maybe we start using this for headers, let's say. This is where I'm going to place my tagged content, or my component, my widget, whatever we want to call it. So I go down to content tagged list, and here all I say is I want you to pull back this particular component, the one I called new widget. So bring this one back and show me it. This is just a simple HTML item, so that's how I want it to be displayed. And that's really it. That's kind of, from soup to nuts, how to create one and then how to drop it on a page. And then we could just go to 10 more pages and drop this same widget on there. So hopefully that makes some sense. Cancel out of there so we didn't save that page, but maybe it's nice that we kept the first like this preview call short, because we really did cover everything in 30 minutes or so. But it does help, I think, to see it and to play with it, like to play with it on dev. Once dev is back online, feel free to create some, and I think creating is really the way to kind of all the lines probably get connected, all the dots probably get connected when you actually play with it and create one.
And do you know when that is going to be back online?
My guess is it's probably going to be online hopefully within the hour or so.
Okay.
I'm not exactly sure when they started it, but it doesn't take too long. When they did the last upgrade, it actually took like less than 30 minutes, but I'm not exactly sure when she pulled the lever, she being Laura Ann in Austin in support. I'm not sure when she started.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, I guess we can probably, I don't know, Vikram, do you feel comfortable to start testing maybe on one of the components that you identified on the site, just to see if you can test it out, see if it works, see if you're comfortable creating one, and see what it does. And then if you want to do that, then if that starts working and you're comfortable doing that, we can go ahead and move forward creating those. And what we can do is go ahead and set up, I don't know, maybe I'll start working on the global classes for like all the H1, all the headings, all the P tags, and all that kind of stuff, just so that we have a global CSS file. And if you create those components, maybe add classes like a parent class to those components, so that we can start adding those classes as well to the CSS file, so that we can target those for responsive and for desktop and all that, so that we don't going forward we don't have any issues. But yeah, I'll start working on the global stuff, and if you can start creating those components, if you're comfortable doing that, and we can go from there. And maybe we can, if we have any questions, Tom, we can meet up again, go a little further in, a little deeper, I guess, because one of the things is going to be, we can create it this way, HTML, like the ones you showed us. But I'm also interested in trying to see if we can do some with some fields, sure. like you did with the blog, right? You added a date field, you added some other stuff. So I'm definitely interested in trying to do some that way as well, just because I think that might be the easier way or faster way. I mean, it doesn't really matter which way we go. Either or is fine, because I think a lot of the changes is going to be coming from us.
Yep.
There's not going to be like another user that's going to go in and try to make edits. That it's going to go through us anyway.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, definitely. Let me just in the last minute or two, so that I don't forget, you can add classes to the tagged list. So I'm not saying we need to do that out of the box, but I just really want to mention that because it does help us to target things like you were saying. We use this trick in other places for other purposes, but just like we can target, IQAs or content blocks or whole pages, we can also target, specific instances of this. So you could have like two, Roger, we talked about like using these iParts for or these tag components for headers, right? Like the really pretty full page. Okay, so you could add a yellow class to this one, and then that one becomes yellow, or you could add a blue class to that, and it becomes blue. You know what I mean?
Modifiers is what we call them. Modifier classes.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can do stuff like that. And then, just to, I know because we literally only have 1 or 2 minutes left, but I guess the cookie cutter, like the perfect example of using custom fields and these web components would be like those headers. And so what we could do is you could create a custom field for that content. So, it just like if I go over here to properties, like instead of having blog date, blog teaser, we could have, which we call like hero title, hero subtitle, hero image, hero whatever, and hero color, and so you could do all that stuff here. And then if you use, like if we go back and watch the video for the blog, like that's how we display, we would have in our tagged list, instead of blog, it would be like hero, like interior page hero or homepage hero or whatever. And that it would display in that way.
Okay. No, that sounds good. I think that's great. So Vikram, go ahead and start playing around with one component just to get yourself familiar with how to create those and tag them. Create a well, Dev is not really ready. Oh, actually, I think it is. I think I just got an email.
So I have I insert few components. Can we have it quickly?
I don't think we have time. I got to get on a call at 4.
Okay.
Right now, I got to get on a call actually.